Hey folks, Mark here from Sea Wild Earth, and I'm on my way to a location where I'm hopefully going to show you how to shoot pretty dynamic motion lapses using the DJI Pocket Osmo 3. But stick around for the end of the video because I'm going to show you this awesome hack on how you can take your regular motion lapses shot with this unit and turn them into something absolutely dynamic that would normally rely on the use of equipment that's going to cost many thousands of dollars. But we're going to do that just with the DJI OSMO Pocket 3 on its own, and it's going to be pretty damn radical. So stick around for that. We're going to be there soon, but in order for me to get to where I need to get to, I'm going to have to climb a pretty big hill, and I'm not looking forward to that one piece. Okay, so to understand what is a motion lapse and a time lapse, you probably hear these things mentioned all the time. A time lapse is a sequence that is shot photographically, and it is a series of photographs that, when put together on a video timeline, create motion. Now, if you think of video, for example, like here right now on the DJI OSMO Pocket 3, I'm shooting 4K 30 frames per second, and it's those frames per second which are the images that the photographic process substitutes. Now, let's say, for example, I'm shooting a time lapse and I want to have a dynamic motion of clouds bursting across the sky. If I was to shoot that as video, I take a video and it doesn't look that great. There is some movement in the sky, but there's not a massive amount that really makes me think, oh wow. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, between each one of the intervals, or for each interval in that sequence, rather than shoot it like a video, I'm going to wait for a certain amount of time, and each image is going to be taken at that exact same time, or that exact same interval, one before the other or one after the other, in order to create a sequence that will take a lot longer to shoot, but will occupy the same amount of time on a video timeline. Bear with me. Let's say, for example, I want to shoot, let's say, 10 seconds of video. Okay, so 10 seconds of video is going to equal 300 images, 30 frames a second times 10. Okay, so 300 images. Now, if I shoot video, press record, wait 10 seconds, end record. All of those 300 images have been filmed immediately after each other in order to create video. Fair assumption. Okay, so if I want to create a time lapse, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take every one of those images and I'm going to add a greater interval between the two. And what happens when I do that is that whatever's happening motion wise in the image is, when I play that back on a 30 frames per second timeline, it's going to have the appearance of an accelerated dynamic. Okay, so if I wait, for example, 5 seconds between taking each image of those same clouds in that scenario I mentioned earlier on, rather than the clouds just moving at their natural cadence, if I'm waiting 5 seconds to take another shot, they will have traveled much further from the point of capture to the point of the second capture. Okay, and so when you take 300 images over a period of time, let's say, depending on the interval, let's say 10 seconds to keep it all whole. 30 frames a second for 10 seconds is 300 images, with a 10-second interval between each image, 3,000 seconds. Okay, in order to create that same 10 seconds of video. So 3,000 seconds, whatever that equates to in minutes, I'll put it up on the screen. I haven't got it on the top of my head. But when you then put that onto your timeline, onto your video timeline, and play it back, you're going to have that massive dynamic element of movement, of motion on your screen. Okay, that's a time lapse. The only difference between that and a motion lapse is that at the start and the end points of your video, in a motion lapse, you're going to have a point of motion start and a point of motion end. And by that, I mean the camera is going to travel either through the x-axis, which is left and right, or up and down, which is the y-axis, or a mixture of the two. Now, these are the only axes that you have available to you on the DJI Pocket Osmo 3 when you're programming your motion lapse. But there is a way to get that third axis, and that third axis is called the z-axis, and that's the one that takes you through an image, so it gives you the appearance of approaching or distancing yourself from a subject. And I'm going to show you at the end of this video how you go about accomplishing that third axis of motion in order to create super dynamic motion lapses using the DJI Pocket Osmo 3. So stick around for that. Well, hopefully it can't be too much longer. I've counted about 170 steps by now, so let's see how it's going. But it's nice to be out in nature, otherwise I'll be cooped up in my office doing editing, boring stuff like that. But instead I'm out here in the beautiful wilds of Okinawa. Cool bananas. Okay, so when we're filming, or when we've opened up our DJI Pocket Osmo 3, in the lower left hand corner here you're going to have your icon for the mode that you're shooting in. If you touch onto that, you'll come to video, and what you want to do, is scroll across until you get to hyperlapse at the end. Okay, and why did that went to hyperlapse. Okay, and click on there, and that now is going to take you into your settings. Okay, by scrolling up you can see you're in hyperlapse, but we want to shoot motion lapse, so we scroll across and we can then set up to do our parameters. Motion lapse, so scroll up again. Okay, so motion lapse, and in here we can set our parameters, okay, by how long of a duration do we want to have the final clip. And you can see in the video duration under the first line of your interval, you can see the video duration is noted there. Okay, I want to create a 20-second time lapse. Okay, so I'm going to be shooting for 30 minutes and with an interval of 3 seconds. So that's going to be the length of my hyperlapse. From there I'm going to go back. Okay, I'm already in 4K 30. Okay, here you can adjust your settings. I'm going to leave it at 4K 30. Okay, and just by pushing your joystick again, okay, you're now back to your main screen. And what you'll notice in the middle of the main screen is this circle with a cross in it. Okay, and what that is, it's going to allow you to set your motion, your key points, or your two key start and finish points. So by using the joystick, you navigate to what is going to be your starting point. Okay, so let's get that shadow out of the way. Let's come around over to here and say, for example, that we want that to be our start point. So when we get to that point, we tap on the screen, boom, and in the top right hand corner you see this blue circle with a white number 1 in it. That relates to your first key point, or your start point. From there you take your joystick and you navigate to your end point, as it were. We don't want to get this post in it. So let's go ahead and put our second key point in there, and now we're set to go. And all we have to do at that point then is to press record, and the camera will go into record mode. Just one quick point as well, with your second, or with your interval, the longer the interval, the faster the elements that move in your image will move. Okay, because let's say, for example, if you've got a 1 second interval between a moving cloud, you're going to have a relatively slow moving cloud through the duration of your clip. If that interval is lengthened to 3 or 5 seconds, for example, you're going to take a sample image every 3 or 5 seconds, and you have to take 30 images in order to make 1 second of video, because we're shooting 30 frames a second. Okay, so bear that in mind, and also the longer the interval, the longer your shooting time. So I'm going to go ahead and decide to shoot this. Okay, so let's hit the red button, the record button. It's going to tell you recording soon, and then it's going to go into its whole process of filming. And what you'll see up in the top here, it's in the top left, it's got an indicator showing you that you've got 29 minutes and however many seconds left, and then with a white arrow that will eventually show you how many seconds of that movie have been recorded. Okay, so I'm not going to bother to film the whole process. I'll just come back to you when it's all said and done. here's a little hack that I use a couple of times, and even on the little clip before this clip, you'll see that I've done it there. If you film something at 4K, so this motion lapse, for example, it was shot at 4K, and then I put that onto a 2.7K timeline in YouTube for editing. Okay, now what I do, because I've got that overlap between the two resolutions of 2.7K and 4K, I've got that little bit of space, like a wiggle room, an overlapping space, where I can use that to create the sense of movement. And the way that I do that is I place that clip on the timeline and then go to the very first frame of that, and I'll set that as a keyframe and increase the size to say 120%. All right, and then I'll come to the very last frame of that sequence, I'll choose that as a second keyframe, and I'll reduce the resolution back down to 100%. Okay, and then what happens once it's rendered and when it plays, it will look as if that image is zooming out, because it's going from 120% down to 100% to fit on the timeline again. Okay, so that is one way of being able to create that false sense of movement, just using resolution, a greater resolution on a lower resolution timeline. And I always put my stuff on YouTube at 2.7K so that I can create that kind of movement without having to go then to the expense of buying a very expensive 3-axis slider. Even though I've got one, it's very cumbersome, it's very heavy, and it's just a pain in the butt. And why not make the most of modern technology with this awesome little camera here? So that's a way for you to create pseudo movement, as it were, with your DJI Pocket Osmo 3. Now in the future, who knows, maybe that that zoom access for a motion control might be available. At the moment it's not. Okay, so that's one way of getting away with that, creating 3 axes from 2. Awesome. Okay, well that's all for me for this shoot. I'm going to love you and leave you. All the best, wishing you to stay happy, healthy, sane, get out there and shoot, share your images, share them with me, I'll share them with the world. And until next time folks, au revoir, adios, arrivederci.